The repository pattern is a strategy for abstracting data access by centralizing the handling of domain objects in order to standardize the dialogue between the service layer and the data access layer. In other words, it means creating an object that exposes generic handlers for performing CRUD operations that will hide the underlying complexity and logic of the chosen object relational mapper. So in this lesson, we're going to implement the user repository that will be used by the service layer in order to retrieve and insert data from and into the database. So let's create a new top-level directory named repositories, and within it, a file named user. Within this file, we're going to write a module that exports a factory function that takes as argument the user model we previously created and returns an object containing the read and create handlers for performing operations on the user's table that will respectively be used by the login and the sign-up services. Fetching a record from a database table can be achieved using the asynchronous find_one method of the corresponding model. This method will return the first entry it finds or a null value otherwise. It takes an optional query object that allows us to specify which columns we want to fetch using the attributes clause and the criteria of our search using the where clause. So based on that, let's update the implementation of the read handler so that it takes the email address of the user we want to fetch and returns a record containing an ID and a password hash. Inserting a record into a database table can be achieved using the asynchronous create method of the corresponding model. This method takes an object as argument containing the values of the record we want to insert and returns the same record in the case of a successful write operation or throws an error otherwise. Based on that, let's update the implementation of the create handler so that it takes an email address and a password hash, insert them into the database, and returns the inserted records. Finally, to wrap this up, let's now create an index file within the repositories directory, and within this file, let's write a module that exports a factory function that takes as argument the model's object and returns another object containing a list of initialized repositories.